Are you ready to learn more about how you can manage record access and visibility in Salesforce? You're in the right place. Welcome to Expert Corner. My name's Leanne Reimel, and I'm going to sit down today with Salesforce Product Manager Larry Tung to learn more about how you can use record access settings to make sure your users are seeing the right information at the right time and you are being a security-minded admin. Before we get started, I'd like to share our forward-looking statement. This is asking to please make all purchasing decisions based on currently available technologies and not any future-looking statements that we might make during this presentation. Let's go meet Larry. Hi, Larry. Thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going?
Hi, Leanne. It's going pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're super excited to have you on today. I know you've got lots of great information for admins around sharing and visibility. But first, we've got all of these admins watching this video who maybe haven't met you yet. So can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Salesforce?
Sure. So I've been with Salesforce since 2006. I took 1 year where I was at DocuSign, which was a great time, but I'm very excited to be back at Salesforce. It's almost been 14 years. And as a product manager in the record access space, my focus is really trying to help administrators set up their security on which users see which records.
I know that's something that is near and dear to our admin's heart, managing which users see which records. And you mentioned you're a product manager on record access. And that, as an admin myself, that encompasses a lot of Salesforce. So can you dive in a little bit and tell us a little more about maybe what features and tooling your team works with and a little bit about your team?
Sure. So we have one specific team that's really focused on the customer's experience. And then I'm also partnering with another team. And that team is really trying to make sure that when we focus on features, we really have them scale. So very performant, large number of users, and being able to make the thing work really fast.
Awesome. Now, I know you have some great kind of details and insights into record access features that admins should be thinking about and hopefully be using. But before we dive into that, I want to make sure we're all on the same page when we talk about some of the foundations of how we control visibility. And I know this is something, Larry, that you think about a lot and your team thinks about a lot. So can you share kind of that foundation of how should admins be viewing and thinking about controlling record access and visibility in their orgs?
Sure. So when I think about an administrator, part of my thinking also shifts to what would the security person say? And so when I think about security, they're often thinking about what's the least amount of privileges we can give a specific person so that they can still do their job. Often is that you start out with a very private model where users don't have access to everything. So I think there's really two approaches. One is, hey, we trust all our users. Everything's just wide open. Everybody has the option to read and write records owned by anybody. On the flip side, security often says, hey, lock everything down. Ensure nobody has access except for maybe to access to records you own. And then with various sharing mechanisms, you open access and you give users more and more access, but just the right level that they need.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And, I know you mentioned something that as admins, we talk about a lot, which is that principle of least privilege. And it's really important for our audience and for admins to always be thinking about how do they be security advocates and be security-minded admins at their company. So when you're thinking about that visibility structure and that record access structure, I know we've had, it covers a lot of feature areas. And I know we've had a lot of releases in the last few years that are very feature rich when it comes to access. And so, you've been working in this world for a long time. What are some things that if you were to talk to admins out there who are like, okay, great, I really want to make sure I'm using some of these features correctly, or I'm using features I should be using. What are some features that are really, and I know it's hard to pick a favorite, but features that are really front of mind for you that admins really shouldn't sleep on, that they should make sure they're exploring as they try to be security minded admins and create an org with the right visibility.
So when I think about recent changes available to administrators, I think one exciting feature is restriction rules. And as I look back, there were a lot of different ideas asking for a feature like this. The problem, or the current state, is that if you see the account, you can see the tasks, events, and contracts. And I was thinking about, what about an external user? They log into a portal. Should they be able to see all the contracts on an account if they have access to that account? And similarly, there's different use cases. As I was reading the Ideas Exchange comments, people were commenting that they would have to move to custom objects, or they sometimes duplicated that account so that there's two sets of accounts, and they would set access for those specific accounts so that people could then put their tasks and events and essentially hide it from the other set of users who have a duplicate account, and those users would see the other account, and the admin would see both accounts. And both of these workarounds are definitely not what we want, and that's why we built restriction rules, which became generally available in winter 22. I think there's also a few other features we've been working on. One is called scoping rules, and the other is called field restriction rules. And field restriction rules is more focused on security for conditionally hiding fields. And if you think about the use case, if I'm an external user, I should not see personal information for another external user. And similarly for work.com, where we had, with the COVID and return to work, you could have employee records in Salesforce. And similarly, you want to be able to see your own employee record and the personal information there that you can edit. But you don't want another employee going in and seeing your personal information unless maybe they're your manager or maybe it's an HR person. And so we built more security so that you can conditionally protect personal information fields. And so that's another feature that recently went generally available in winter 22 that we're continually trying to enhance, especially for the external user use case.
Now, those are two, really important features to use. I know particularly like restriction rules was something that I had worked with a lot of customers that they were, eager to have that access to that tool. What are other things, like, can you share anything that's coming on the roadmap? I know you spend a ton of time in the idea exchange and you're in touch with what our community is doing in this space. What are some things, if any, that you can share with us that are coming in the next few releases that admins can look forward to?
So from a spring 22 perspective, my team's been working on enhancing criteria-based sharing rules. A few releases back, we created criteria-based sharing rules that were a little bit more flexible for guests, so that if you had a business to consumer use case, so B2C, and you had these customer community users, the records they owned, there wasn't an easy way to share those with the guest user. And we're taking that same framework, and then we're saying that if you have records that are owned by these customer community users, or even what we call these system users, you can share those through criteria-based sharing rules. Part of that was something that was on Ideas Exchange, and also we had a known issue about, and we see customers getting tripped up here. And it's perhaps something we wish we could reverse when we first built criteria-based sharing rules. Ideally, as long as it meets the criteria, those records could be then shared with a set of users. But for whatever reasons, historically, there's these customer community users and also what we call these system users, that those records weren't considered. And so we're trying to make it easier for customers so they don't have to write code to change who owns the record just for visibility purposes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another feature that we've been thinking about is, how do we essentially give line of business, you can call them a citizen developer, or maybe they're essentially folks who are trying to build an application for one department. And when I think about use cases, for example, let's say for whatever reasons, someone hires me to only focus on one department, and we'll call this department our HR department. And I'm busy at work working on a recruiting app. should I then have access to all the other apps that other people are building in the same Salesforce org? And probably not. And so one thing we've been thinking about is, well, how do we work on that? And I don't have any specific release where this will become generally available, but my team is starting to think about this. And I think it has broader use cases than just someone building a application for a specific department. It could also be leveraged by other teams. I was talking more recently with Pardot, and they were saying, hey, yeah, we would, certain scenarios, the marketer wants to only be able to see certain things within the app. They don't care about the rest of the app. And security says they shouldn't see it either. So we're trying to solve for that. That's more of maybe something for next year, but something we're excited about, something new that we're hoping to really see customers leverage.
Yeah, I know that feature in particular, that's something that we talked about at Dreamforce. And the thing that stuck with me as I started to learn more about that feature and just the potential work that's going into that is, as a longtime admin, it reminded me of delegated administration. Right? So the ability as an admin to, you might have people who are junior admins, who are newer admins, who are in totally other business units, and giving them the ability to, be the champion for their group and to like modify their app or to build a new app or to enable like business group managers or owners to build their own apps. Like, to me, the first thing I thought of was, oh man, this is going to be so great for admins. Because I think back on, when we first got the ability to clone dashboards, right? And many, even at Salesforce a long time too. Like, you remember when that came out, and it was such a big deal because it meant that as an admin, you could start to, create maybe a framework or a model for something like a dashboard, and then share it out for different groups and have people customize it to make their own, but they're enabled with kind of a framework that you've put together. So yeah, I get really excited for the admin potential when I hear about some of the kind of business user admin enablement features your team is working on, because I think that could potentially be a big time saver and put admins in the position to enable other groups to do some of that like later customization without, making them admins.
Right. I think that essentially you're now leveraging or partnering with a lot more people in the organization, and security can say, hey, we're happy with these folks getting full access to what they need to do to really just make their jobs easier. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. So you shared with us, some key features for admins to get hands-on with today, give us a little bit of a sneak peek of things that are coming in the future. I know you have resources that you recommend, or kind of steps. Like, I'm sure we have admins watching this that are like, okay, awesome. What do I do next? Right? Like, I want to take advantage of some of these features. I want to use them in my environments. What are some of your recommendations for admins when it comes to kind of next steps?
Well, when I think about admins, I think there's a wide range. I think about when I first joined the team, man, I've been at Salesforce for a long time, and I had, I'd got 11 certifications. And so supposedly I'm an expert in a lot of things, but as most people know, at least for me, if I don't practice it hands-on and I don't use it day to day, or I'm not presenting it, then slowly that information fades. And I was trying to understand, our team owns so many features, as you mentioned earlier. How do admins get their heads around things? And so I was thinking, okay, what if I were just joining this space and I had to figure out what to do? And so I started reading through our documentation. And from there, I saw from these Who Sees What series. And I thought, wow, this is actually pretty cool. So I went through that and I thought, wow, I'm learning some things, even though I'm already certified, but these videos were pretty good. And then there were corresponding trailheads. So I went through the video and then trailhead. And then I found one that was for Experience Cloud, when you're building communities and protecting external users. So I did both the external Who Sees What series, and then also did the trailhead for that. And then I was wondering, well, how does all of this work underneath the covers? Like, why does certain operations, when you're as an admin, it's easy to think, oh, I just create this sharing rule and wow, stuff just works. But sometimes things take longer. And what exactly did one admin do such that that specific operation takes more time? Or why does it take a longer period of time if you're doing a mass sales reorg, for example? And so then I started trying to say, okay, well, how do I find out about that? And that led to reading more. And there was this document called Record Access Under the Hood. And I was thinking, under the hood, man, I don't usually want to get there, at least for my car. Like, I drive my Honda Civic. It's a 2002. It just runs, right? Like, I don't want to know what happens under the hood. I just rely on it to get me from point A to B. But I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is actually not easy to understand. At least for me, it wasn't. So I read him a few times, just trying to make sure I understood what was going on. But it really gave me an appreciation. When I make certain changes, Salesforce does a bunch of computations. And then that way, once we computed this information, when you ask, hey, does such and such user have access to this, Salesforce can return a quick response to you. And so that document kind of goes over all of the under the hood stuff. And then the next thing I was starting to explore is, what about those companies that just have a lot of data in Salesforce? And when they do a reorg within their own, changing who owns what records or belong to different territories, what exactly happens? And that's where there's other document, Enterprise, talking about designing record access for enterprise scale. And then that gave me a bunch of tips as well. But that one was really focused on large data volumes and what different tools we give you to solve for that. So I would highly recommend that if you have a implementation with a lot of records. And then finally, hopefully you're not sick of resources. I was looking at security model Medium posts, and one architect, Sandrine, she's out in APAC, and she had 2 really good articles I thought were a good read, just talking about security and kind of her mindset of how she designs and she coaches nonprofits to build their security models.
Awesome. Well, and don't worry, everyone who's watching, all of these are linked in the blog, in the show notes, so you can find them there. Well, these are, great jumping off points, great resources. Larry, I appreciate you sharing your expertise, and I know you have a lot of passion for this for admins. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Leanne, and thanks everyone for watching. I really look forward to just hearing more of your feedback. I'm often on Ideas Exchange trying to understand how do customers use what we're trying to build, and also just trying to understand, where do we invest next?
You heard Larry. Make sure to go vote for your ideas on Idea Exchange, comment, submit ideas. I think it's awesome. I know your team really does spend a lot of time there, kind of combing through the ideas and understanding the workarounds that people have as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Larry. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you next time.
Awesome. I hope you are all ready to be security-minded admins and start taking advantage of some of those great features, especially those newer features that Larry detailed in our chat. All the links for the references Larry mentioned are in our show notes on admin.salesforce.com. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an interview like this. That's all for today, and I'll see you on the next Expert Corner.